Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Lisa Stellinga. Welcome to the show. Really looking forward to diving in, Lisa, to this today.
Simon, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm excited to see what our conversation is going to bring.
I'm excited too because, listeners, Lisa's written some notes before the conversation. I'm thinking, isn't that what a fantastic person that's given some thought to the, and I think I'm just scribbling at my notes last time, and I'm thinking, well, I was just going on my notes. I didn't make any fresh notes. Lisa's ahead of me on this thing. So Lisa would like to start by reading a couple of paragraphs from her book, and then we're going to dive in from that. So would you like to go ahead and share those words?
Let's start with the story. It starts out stone walls. I am standing outside the stone walls of a city where established vines have been growing, each one representing a family line, some with old grapes, some new. I'm an adult now. I finally made it back to the village of my ancestors, and I can reunite with the family I lost when I was a baby. Surely they'd thought of me over the years with fond memories, the way I'd thought of them. I announce myself and pound repeatedly on the door to the city, but this effort is met with silence. On the other side of the wall, a guard secretly listens, and then he reports my presence to the queen. She tells this messenger that I threatened to tell the secrets of her kingdom and to consider me dead. The queen, obsessed with her own protection, muses, surely leaving her out in the cold will be her demise, and her voice will grow faint, and then no more. I stay there all night, cold, confused, and discouraged. My dream of reunification that carried me for so long didn't make room for this scenario. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierces my heart, and I recognize the dark cloud of angst pulling breath from my body. The feeling I've been trying to avoid my entire life, my survival instincts kick into gear as I venture back to the life I knew before, outside of the gates. Only this time, as I return to my old life, my senses are on high alert as anticipation of trauma and rejection now have become a reality.
Wow. There's so much there. Yeah. Yeah, we've got the dream of reunification and the fear of a living nightmare, haven't we? We've got a what's the word? A paradox.
A huge paradox.
Huge paradox.
But, you know, the feeling of this metaphor, this was the reality that I lived in. And for many years, I actually had a dream at night that was very similar. I had a recurring nightmare when I was a child, and this is going to get hopeful. That's my whole point, is to show the hope in this. But the hope that I finally live in now, this is its origin. And this is where it came from. But the reoccurring nightmare, Simon, that I had was I'd be on a ship and I'd be heading towards these big cliffs. And there was this black witch that would wave me in and say, come closer, come closer. And in this reoccurring dream, I would finally come closer. And I would go into a cave, and then I was pushed down a large hole. And so it's interesting that I spent so much of my life trying to make sense of this reoccurring dream and this feeling of annihilation. And the good thing in all of this is that it led me to seek answers. It led me to say, what is this? And so it led me then to researching and questioning adoption when everybody else was telling me, you are so blessed. You have been adopted. You should be so thankful. And yet there was a part of me where this sadness and this fear loomed. And I needed to take care of that first before I could grasp and embrace the hope.
Yeah. we need to feel separate to be reunited, right? Even if it's with ourselves. I'm listening to something at the moment. He talks about, he's not talking about adoption, but he's talking about a spiritual journey, and he talks about the fourth stage. So the first stage is baby, no ego. Then second stage is child, development of ego. Adult, pretty much full ego fullness. And then the fourth one is seer, like finder, somebody who goes from being a seeker to being a finder, and goes back to that selfless place, egoless place. It's like we have to, the tough feelings are there like rumble strips along the, we call them motorways, you call them freeways, rumble strips. So a rumble strip alongside of a motorway in the UK is there to warn you you're going off course, and so you've drifted off, and it's to send you back on course. And that's what the tough feelings are. But we're trying to avoid those.
Well, we have rumble strips in the United States too. I don't know if we have a name for them, though. I like that. And they are sure used to awaken our senses, which leads me to, thinking about senses. Dreams are a compilation of senses. It pulls in all of our senses and the metaphors that we draw from them. But what gets me is that whether a birth mom was able to put love around her pregnancy or she was not able to, every single person has a chance to say, I want me. And it was through deep feelings of rejection over the years, because I felt rejection before I had knowledge of my records and my story. And I could get into that at some point. It was, I want me came from anger and fear and being tired of living in the anger and the fear. And just like you push off on a diving board so that you can propel yourself into the water, I finally had to push away from the anger and fear. And it was the anger that made me say, you know what? Even if she didn't want me, I want me. I want me. And so just as babies protest when they're born, babies are born angry and scared, and I've left my warm water home, and what's going on out here? What is this light shining in my face? And who are these people? They protest because they feel powerless and fearful. And so anger becomes a protest for life. And so I Want Me was born out of deep feelings of rejection and hurt. And so whether someone knows their story or not, they can choose to say, I want me. Even if the whole world doesn't want me, I want me. And even people who aren't adopted have to deal with feelings of rejection. And so anybody can get to the place if we can, if somebody's in touch with their deep feelings of rejection, that can be a place of, I want me.
Yeah, if there's no rumble strips, then we go off course.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're this is the whole thing. Like we're, what did you say? Anger is what?
Fear. I mean, you talk about that being the toxic cocktail in some of your other podcasts, and so anger and fear, living in that constant state and being tired of living there, what was a place I didn't want to be in anymore. And so I Want Me was my protest against anger and fear and feelings of rejection.
So your wisdom was guiding you there. Your wisdom was saying, right, I've got anger, fear, and rejection here. They're not me. I want the alternative. I want me. So you were, so the thing that Lisa's referring to, I think, is this idea I came up with a couple of months ago, that trauma is a toxic cocktail of insecurity, fear, and anger. But we are the glass, not its contents. Not its contents. So the me is the glass, not the cocktail that's in it, not the drink. So we're separating who we are from how we feel.
Yeah, the awareness that I had a container. It's very much the awareness of, wait a minute, I have a beginning and an end. I have a container. And people that come from trauma, they try to not live in their container. When we have trauma, we try to disassociate and get away from our container. It's the courage of, wait a minute, I have a container and I'm a person.
Yeah.
It's the acknowledgement of it.
And you could go even further than that. You could say, actually, you are awareness. You are what we are, awareness. We are awareness, not what we are aware of. Right. So awareness is us.
Absolutely.
Trauma
yes.
is what we are aware of.
Well, and I love the some of the Ericksonian therapies, and I'm a therapist and mental health therapist, and for many years I worked in the addiction field, and then later went on to try to learn more about family systems, and then eventually work with adoptees and their families. But what's interesting is the awareness of being a container. I had to be held by something to have that awareness. I had to be held from the outside to have an awareness of me. And in my own journey, it was through my faith. And in my own journey, I believe that it was God's love for me, and then bringing the right people around who put their love around me. And that's what brought to me the awareness that I have a container, that I have a body, and that I didn't need to disassociate all the time and stay in my head and use pleasing behavior. It was through the love of other people that I believe God brought along the way that gave me the courage then to have the awareness to even be present in my body.
So are you into that somatic stuff where when we're talking about, so one of another therapist that was on the show a few weeks back, sorry, I can't remember who it was. She said, look, this adoptee trauma is pre-verbal. So that presents a fundamental challenge for talk therapy because we haven't got words for it. So how can we talk it out? How can we talk out something that we haven't got words for? We have to go somewhere else, and we have to, as you're saying, we have to go out of our heads into our body, and that's the somatic stuff. As I haven't done any somatic stuff, but that's what I'm told.
I love somatic work. I love somatic processing. The work of Peter Levine and Vanderkolk, they talk about, the injury that happens through being separated at birth. Talk therapy doesn't work or address that because talk does not get at the part of the brain where there is injury. That part of the brain where there is separation is a somatic process. And so it's about feeling your way through it. It's about feeling your way through a moment in time, even. Peter Levine, who is the founder of somatic experiencing, talks about our protest longing to find the place where it began. So yes, I very much believe in somatic processing.
So you said anger is a protest, I think. Is that what you said? Anger is a protest?
Anger is a protest. Absolutely. I think anger, fear, I think those are all protests.
Yeah, I was thinking about, the baby being born or me being born, whatever, and they come into the world, with this anger. But I mean, a lot of it's got to be to do with being pushed down this narrow hole. We've been, like this narrow tunnel. Like we've been hanging out at this in this womb. Everything's been kind of, well, it's been okay, or have we been marinating in shame? Like our birth mums, if the birth mums are marinating in shame, people talk about that. So we've had that, or we've had a pleasant experience in the womb, or we've had a less pleasant experience. Then we've had a deeply unpleasant experience being forced down this narrow tube and come out, and it's a bit of a shock, right?
Well, uncomfortable, painful for some babies. I cannot remember the psychologist or the doctor who said it. He said that the only reason babies can survive birth is because they can get to the arms of their mother and get comfort afterwards. And some babies never get that, and then they stay in a perpetual state of wanting to return to a place that's comfortable, or finding a place of comfort. But anger, I think, is an expression of extreme feelings of powerlessness. Anger is an expression of extreme feelings of powerlessness. My friend Brian Post, I know you had him on the show some time ago, and Brian is the founder of the stress model, and he talks a lot about all feelings come from love or fear. Feelings originate from either one of those guideposts or one of those places. So fear, powerlessness, anger, they're all in the same vein. When I have a client come and they're very angry, I don't say that they have an anger problem. I say that they have a problem with vulnerability. So a really angry client needs to work on gaining a tolerance for being vulnerable, or finding a safe place where they can be vulnerable. And someone who comes in here who's really smiley and pleasing, they are often the ones that have the anger problem, because they're not comfortable at all with the expression of anger. And so I know I find the work of Levine so fascinating, because people have this anger expression or this protest in their life, and often it's misplaced. And sometimes healing is finding that place where the protests belong. For myself, my protest that I had in my life, the places that I protest were misplaced. My protest was really against feeling rejected. And when I finally could say, I want me, and bring it back to the womb, it brought together so much. And I didn't need displaced protest anymore. I want me, going back to those feelings of rejection, and then bringing the healing to that place through matching the protest to the place where it belonged.
Wow. I had a random thought a while ago, and I haven't run it past anybody. But since we're talking about birth and stuff like that, the question to me was, what if cutting the umbilical cord is the primal wound? Because that's our first experience of separation, isn't it? I mean, clearly it's pre-verbal, but so it's a matter of how far away we are from our mother. Like first day at kindergarten, or first day at school, or it's degrees of separation. And obviously, as adoptees, we have a special sort of degree of separation.
Because through our lifespan, then you're right, we work on increasing the degree of separation, having a tolerance for it. There's a big movement right now in the birthing community to not cut the umbilical cord right away, and to let the baby lay on the mother until all the blood returns. The blood from the placenta goes to the baby, and then when that is complete, then cutting the umbilical cord with the baby on the mother. There's, in the Western medicine, there's such a rush to get the baby out and cut the umbilical cord. I really like this idea of waiting. And I've watched a lot of videos, and it's kind of cool to see how alive and how alert the baby becomes as they wait for this process for all the blood to leave the placenta and go into the baby or the mother. And they're quite alert, and they're quite calm. But we like in America and in Western medicine to do the shock treatment, and I think there's probably a better way. But I agree with you that that's probably the first separation. Is it traumatic? I think when you have a baby who's not put back in the mother's arms, I do think it's traumatic, because a baby knows her smell and her sound, right?
Yeah.
But I want to tell another story, if I can, Simon.
Go for it.
So, I was adopted in the 60s. In 57, I was born in 1966, and it was a very traditional adoption back then. It was closed, and I was placed into a very traditional family. My parents were Catholic and hardworking, and they were provided very little information about me. They were provided my gender and my weight. Women don't like their weight announced anyway, but that's what was announced at the beginning. And the identifying information about my birth mom was that she was German, and that she also was Catholic. And so, back in those days, they really considered babies like a blank canvas, and here's your new baby, and go ahead and put your values and your patterns and your ideas onto this baby, and she or he will be molded, or they, whatever term you want to use these days, will be molded into your character. And so that was and I was adopted at 2 weeks, and I learned very quickly, the cuter I was, the more I smiled, the better response I got from people. And that worked out really well for me. And that the pleasing priority can happen to someone who's not adopted. But it sure was a great way for me to bypass or avoid developing my own identity. And identity is such a big deal for adoption, right? And in closed adoption, without any information, it's hard to draw an identity from no information, right? So I was constantly looking for people who looked like me. I was constantly looking for anybody who had any similarities. When I was young, at one point, I was probably sure that Farrah Fawcett, a famous actress in the United States, was my mother, and she had went to Hollywood and therefore couldn't raise me. I was always coming up with stories of why I was relinquished, because there was just no information. And so, very typical growing up, played kickball outside in the neighborhood, went camping in the summer, and all was well until about junior high, when I really started to realize that sometimes people could be mad at me. I realized that peers sometimes could say mean things. I think in elementary school, teachers are about inclusiveness and get everybody involved. And then developmentally in middle school is when people start using their own judgment on who they want to be around and who they like and who they don't like. That's when I first experienced feelings of rejection. When peers were mad at me, it wasn't just they were crabby for the day, they didn't like me anymore. And so my interpretation of people's moods really changed when I was in middle school. And eventually, my interpretation of facial expression or a gesture from somebody, I came up with a conclusion all the time that people rejected me. And then about that time, it became really evident to my mom that I got depressed every October. And so October was really, in middle school, I started getting depressed. And then every October after that, I would get depressed. And all the way into college, I remember my mom called at the end of September, and she said, "Are you doing okay?" I said, "Yeah, so far." And she said, "Well, I'm just checking on you because October is a hard month for you." Well, pull that forward. I usually got out of it by December through the use of music and using music as my therapy. And So it was just a known fact in my family that every October I got depressed, and sometimes in March. Well, when I was 25, I got my birth records open. I had to do a court order and had my records opened. And what was so interesting is that when I read my records, my birth mom was engaged to my birth father. And they met in the summer, and I was conceived, I think, probably in August. And he then, right afterwards, went off to boot camp to be a soldier because he was going to be in the Vietnam War. In October, he wrote my birth mother a letter saying, I'm breaking up with you. I'm no longer going to marry you. So he wrote her a Dear Jane letter, basically, and broke up with her. This was all in my birth record because she wrote letters to her social worker. And it changed everything. You know, the teddy bear for you and your story, and finding out that that was from your birth mom was a changing point for you. The changing point in my life was reading my birth record and finding out October was the month where my birth mother's dreams were crashed down and trampled on. And I realized that I had been carrying her depression in October. Because wow. That is when I think she emotionally separated from me. That's where the chain of letters would indicate. But it's when I said, you know what? I'm not going to carry her depression anymore. This is her sadness. And again, that is where I Want Me was developed.
Wow. So when you say me, what do you mean?
Good question. Well, the awesome thing about reading my birth record and reading about October was it gave me a chance to say I am different than my history from my birth mom, from my aunt. I'm different and I'm the same. But it gave me permission to push against and to be me and to not be chained to an old history, to be chained to her fight or her struggle. And so it was this beautiful time of wrapping my arms around me, which Peter Levine does in his healing work. It was a time where I could say, I want me, and to push against and to reject myself instead of feeling rejected, permission for me to reject some of the negativity that I was born into.
We used to do that as before we were teens. We used to do that at parties, do the hugging yourself stuff.
You did that at parties?
Yeah, when we're like 11 or something.
That's kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
You were kind of having I Want Me parties.
We were, yeah. So
how did you start it? Like when we had sleepovers, we used to do light as a feather, or light as a feather, heavy as a board, or something like that. And then we would try to levitate each other with our fingers. What was the
this thing was just a joke. This was just a joke thing for kids, for lads that were pretending, like, you know, because they were, we weren't, you know, we weren't all that interested in girls at that point, because we hadn't
developmentally, yeah.
It was just a strange thing, you know, we used to do. I don't know. But this whole unlovability thing it's everybody's got it. And like the thing, one of the things that's becoming clear to me at the moment is that we can, as adoptees, we're really good at describing our trauma, and we can talk about that till the cows come home. But I haven't really found anybody yet that in the adoptee space can make identity crystal clear. So if we're looking to, but in the non-adoptee community, I saw something on Facebook yesterday on this, and I put a post out. I thought, like, if we think we can only learn from other adoptees, then we're kind of limiting who we can learn from. But if we learn from if we've got a bigger pool, then we can learn from the geniuses in this area. So whether that's and people have their own different geniuses, whether that's some people love Eckhart Tolle, some people love Brene Brown, some people love Dalai Lama, some people love I love Rupert Spira. Some people I like early Don Miguel Ruiz, but his later stuff is a little bit too techniquey. But if we open but like loads of people are talking about lovability. We can tap into wiser people who are better at pointing us out to who we are and the lovability that is at our essence. And the fact that some people would go as far as to say we are love, right? So if we are love, then if we are love, then we're not going to be desperate for love from others, right?
Well, that's the conundrum. If we are loved, finding that within ourselves and accepting it, right?
Sorry, if we are love, I mean, if we are love, not loved, if we are love, if we are love, if our identity is love, then we don't need to go looking at it. We don't need to go looking externally for it.
And I think, and so we can respectfully have different ideas on that, because I believe that the process of learning we are loved is from the outside in. My belief system would say that we can't originate that within ourselves, that we have to be shown love. We have to have it modeled for us. I can say all day, I am loved, I am loved, I am loved. But if I've not seen that on the outside, had an example of it, I don't know how to go to it in my belief system. And so I love, there's an old book called Mothering Ourselves, and she talks about the people, the mothers along the way, and going to the examples of ways we've been mothered and loved from people, and that those pieces make up a patchwork quilt. And then we put that patchwork quilt around us through the many examples of love that have come along the way, just like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It was people along the path that helped her to find her way and find who she was. But so it's just a paradigm difference.
I think we have to see it for ourselves. Definitely, we have to see it for ourselves. We have to feel it for ourselves, and therein lies the conundrum and the challenge. So yesterday I was interviewing AJ Bilo, a fellow adoptee and a writer, but creative person like yourself, not a therapist. But she was her adoptive mum was showing her no love whatsoever, and therefore she struggled. So we're looking at we can look at our trauma and our experience, and we can say, right, well, there's the relinquishment piece, and there's the how we were raised piece. We can look at that, divide that theoretically, but it's still the same. A gin and tonic, gin and tonic but you're drinking gin and tonic. It doesn't make any difference. It can't. The theory, the separation between the two ingredients is theoretical. It doesn't.
Yeah, we could do theory all day long.
Yeah.
But I've heard you talk about. I know identity has been something that you've talked about on your different podcasts, and what I love about the fact that we have these amazing bodies is some of our story is told through the way that we live in our body. There's information. I mean, my gosh, if we look at the generational memory, genetic memory, I mean, there's so much research being done, and just the patterns in our lives sometimes can lead us to some identity, can give us some information, right? But what I like about open adoption is that adoptees have information available to them. They don't have to work so hard to try to find identity. If someone is Native American and they're adopted into a white family and it's an open adoption, they have some information. But I think identity is really hard as an adoptee from a closed system because there's no information. Identity comes from those people around us that look like us, the people that share our laugh, the people that have our sense of humor, people that have blonde hair for me, people who get sunburns in the summer because of white skin. And so it's really hard to form an identity without information. And so having information about ancestors and family is one way to form identity. The other part is the acceptance of our container and learning from our body. And so until I opened up my adoption records, all I could do was go on my felt sense and who I thought I was and what I thought I knew.
Yeah, I mean, you're clearly a very bright and a very creative person. So you're looking for answers, and in the absence of answers, you made stuff up, and that's what creative people do. And for me, as a mass generalization, we think of women being more right-brained, right? Having been more about creativity, more about relationships, and left, guys being more left-brained. Like, is this why women struggle more and make up more stuff? Who knows, right? So maybe it's a stupid mass generalization. But identity is a multi-leveled thing. It's a word that's bandied around, and for me, it's the exploration, it's the fascination.
Yes.
I believe, or where I'm at now after 14 years of looking at it, I believe that identity is awareness. Or consciousness. That's where I look at awareness, and so the traditional model is that the body, and in particular the brain, has consciousness, and Rupert Spira and his gang would say no, consciousness has the body. So it's kind of understanding. Yeah. Anyway, that's my stuff. So how do you see it?
I love that. I agree with that. I agree. I think if you look at Jung's collective unconscious, he just had so many insights that people weren't ready for when he introduced them. But the collective unconscious and being able just to be aware and then gathering information just from being present and aware, because of trauma and stress and anxiety, that's what keeps people from being present, conscious, and aware. And learning how to keep those things at bay is what so many people spend their whole lives doing, I believe.
Yes.
Excuse me. But it's interesting. After working 25 years with adoptive families and teaching parents how to heal their adopted child, and plus on my own journey of healing, it's interesting. I think the most important work I've ever done is holding babies in the NICU, and I just started that this year. And it is 2 hours a week of being present with a baby that doesn't know me and I don't know them. But it is, I've learned so much just by the little gestures and the little facial expressions. And a lot of times they're swaddled, and my favorite thing to do is to unwrap them and see if they'll hold my finger. And the babies that can hold my finger, I have a lot more hope for because they're more present. When I have a baby, though, that can't grasp, and sometimes it's because of the age, but when they don't hold back, I'm a lot more concerned. In my way, I've learned that if I sing to the babies, I can get them to be present. And I find, and they'll sometimes crack open an eye like, what is that? And then they can feel the vibration. But it's been the greatest lesson I've ever learned in being present. And for 2 hours a week, I'm probably more present in my own body than I've ever been before. And then I can hopefully provide for them just a couple hours during the week to be present in their bodies without it just being painful or lonely.
Wow.
But I do, but I have hope when I do this. And my hope is, see, I believe that people's identity and their story is being told all the time through patterns. And that's where Jung talked about patterns, that our identity is sometimes expressed through archetypes and through patterns that we live. So young kids that I work with, I don't always know their history, but I watch their patterns in play. I once had a little boy who kept playing and reenacting that I have a lot of toys in my office, and he would reenact a mother being beaten by a man, and then we would try to find safety for her, and we'd try to find safety for her baby, and he would reenact this and play over and over. There's his metaphor, right? Mothers need protection. And usually his mother dropped him off. This is someone I worked with 20 some years ago. His mother would drop him off, and then one day his father picked him up, and I was telling the dad about the play, and he goes, "Why did you tell him that?" And I said, "What do you mean, why did I tell him that?" He goes, "Why did you tell him his story?" I said, I don't know his story. He goes, "That's his story. His mother placed him for adoption to protect him from his abusive father." So I believe in that part of his identity of being a survivor. He was telling me, "I'm a survivor and my mother protected me." He knew that's intrinsic. That's innate. He knew that. And he needed words and actions to match what he knew in his body. So I believe that if we watch people close enough, we can watch what they're reenacting. Look what Michael Jackson did. He reenacted a need to play as a child. It became sexual and weird. I'm trying to think of other famous people, even writers. A lot of times their books, the story of Mary Poppins is a metaphor of her trying to understand her life. If we look close enough, people are telling their identity and their metaphor through their patterns and their play. But it takes a close eye to find that.
So you've got a sign on your wall that's behind you that says, "Not all wanderers are lost."
That's true.
So not all who wander are lost. And I was thinking about your what's it called, Wizard of Oz, the Julie Garland film, right? She wakes up, she clicks her heels, and then she's home, and she never went anywhere. She went out into the world and found everything at home was all right, and but it was just a dream. The whole thing was a whole dream, I think. Wasn't that the story, the metaphor?
Well, what I love about that story and is why was she with Uncle Henry and Auntie Em? Why wasn't she with her parents? And in that story, it's black and white when she's with Uncle Henry and Auntie Em. And it takes a tornado or a trauma or something that jolts her out of the mundane into a life and a place that's colorful and interesting, where her courage needs to be practiced, where her fear is practiced, where her curiosity is sparked. And some people would speculate that all the characters she met along the way, the Wicked Witch and the Good Witch, the Shadow Self, and the persona, that somehow she was actually meeting sides of herself. The Scarecrow, he needed a brain. She needed her own thoughts. The lion needed courage. She needed courage. And the Tin Man needed a heart. These were all parts of herself that needed to be developed. And so it's just a great story that can be picked apart. And she had to go out on a journey to find parts of herself and then go back to the place where she came. But we're all on a journey, and it can be really hard, but I think journeys are always better when we have people along the path, or those strips on the highway that keep us in line. And so always looking for the people who are guiding us, I think is a good goal, and I think it's a positive thing.
Can you talk a little bit more about the rumble strips and the avoiding the feelings and the suppression and the generally speaking, as in the West, we've become emotophobic, haven't we? We're very scared of our emotions, and I speak for myself in that area. Like worried about worrying, angry about being angry. So everything kind of it snowballs, right? It snowballs. But we're trying to suppress our. I know you're the therapist. You know more about this than me. I mean, what's the thing about suppression and emotophobia and stuff like that? How does that play?
Well, I'm going to refer to Peter Levine again, and I like Peter Levine because he makes everything really simple. And he also teaches us how to use the information in our body and use our bodies instead of just staying in our brains. But in a nutshell, he says that trauma comes from being vulnerable and hurt. And healing comes from being vulnerable and safe. Well, the problem is if in a state of vulnerability we were hurt, and sometimes that hurt is just a feeling, then we avoid that our whole life. But we have to come back to, so if I, in my vulnerability of being born, felt rejected and I was removed from my birth mom and felt like she didn't want me, why would I ever return to that feeling and be vulnerable? But part of healing is being brave enough and having maybe people with us who are not afraid of emotion to say, I'm going to return to that place where I'm vulnerable and just feel that feeling. Sometimes healing is as simple as, I'm going to go back to my story. I'm going to go back, if I were a soldier, to the place where the bomb went off and my best friend died. And I'm going to feel the fear, but I'm going to feel it in a safe place now, because it wasn't safe to feel it when I was in Iraq. Or the fireman who couldn't save a baby from being burned in a fire. And so going back to the story and feeling vulnerable in a safe place and just feeling sad and regretful that they had to watch that and couldn't save that baby. So we spend our whole lives running away from scary feelings and finding a safe place and recognizing safety, and then being able to say, okay, it's just a feeling. I'm going to feel it for a few moments, and it's going to be scary feeling that in my body, but then it's going to work through my body and be no more. It's really that simple and that hard.
Just we had Pamela Karanova on the show a few months back. So she she was an alcoholic for decades. I think, I can't remember how many she talks about it, but she her turnaround point was putting up with the feelings. So she was numbing, and it's crystal clear, right? She was numbing for X years, numbing those emotions, and then when she decided she was going to feel the emotions and not try and push them away, not try and numb them, that was when her big light bulb moment went off, and then she saw her, she saw that she was bigger than her emotions, basically.
Feeling into healing is one of the things that people use in therapy. Feeling into healing. But I still say sometimes a therapy office is a safe container. People have to identify where safety is in order then to finally be brave enough to allow those feelings to come up and out. And I just, it can be just a moment someone runs from their whole life. And when they're brave enough then, and they find a place of safety or a person of safety, then they can say, I'm scared. I was so scared. I'm scared, to finally feel it and express it. So then they can heal. The protest and the fear matches the situation, and then it frees them to move forward into a place of hope and safety.
That feels like a brilliant point to bring it in. Have you got a title comes to mind? Does a title come to mind for this interview, when the podcast goes down?
I want me.
Okay. That's what it'll be then.
Well, Simon, this was so fun. It's so fun to have conversation and to bounce ideas off one another and to get to know you. And your name always reminds me of an old cartoon. And I thought it was from the UK, and it was, well, I know my name is Simon, and the things I draw come true. Do you know that cartoon?
No, I don't.
I've been singing that all morning, anticipation.
Okay, I'm going to check that out, because there was a kids' TV program in the 70s called Mr. Ben, right? So that's my surname. So that's what I was thinking of. So it's about this guy who he goes into a fancy dress hire shop, and then has the adventure that fits with his outfit. So he puts on this kind of jungle outfit and then goes into the jungle, and yeah,
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. So that's where I thought you're going to go. But there were it's like when I say, people ask me my name, and British people, I'm Mr. Ben. Oh, right, like the cartoon. And also there's Big Ben. There's Big Ben, which is the name of the bell on the
clock,
the Parliament clock.
Yeah.
So let's do it again soon.
I would love that.
Yeah. Thank you, listeners. Thanks for listening. I want me. Yeah, that's kind of sums it up. Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.